Hi, and welcome back to Psychology Demystified with me, Dr. Karen. Today I'll be continuing part 2 of something I started last week. Last week I came to you talking about anxiety in children, and I left you with a little teaser. And I said I'd come back this week and talk about different ways in which you can calm an anxious child. I'm hoping that this information is helpful to you if you work with children at any point of your life and you have continuous exposure to them. Because in order for you to identify signs of anxiety, you do have to know the child, whether it's your child or a child you work with, or whether you are a camp counselor or a teacher or anyone who has routine interactions with a child. You need to have observed that they have the symptoms I mentioned last week in order to be able to use what I'm going to talk about today. So please keep watching. I know some of you, whether you're uncles or aunts or parents or sisters or brothers, have been at a loss on how to calm a child down when they're anxious at these particular moments. Let me name some scenarios that may actually really be relevant to you. You arrive at a birthday party and your child or the child you're taking has been super excited about this party all week, all month, and has talked about nothing else. But when you get to the door, they become too worried to walk through the door. That's one scenario. Some of you are thinking, yep, that happened to me just yesterday. Another scenario, doctor's office. The nurse is approaching with a needle in hand. I can see some adults are probably thinking, I'm anxious. I know I get anxious when I see someone coming at me with needles. But yeah, your child suddenly sees this nurse coming at them with a needle. Anxiety starts. You can see it. You definitely see it. That's another familiar scenario. Another one. You get to a new activity that you've signed up for, summer camp. Some of you are thinking of summer camp. You get to this new activity that you signed your child up for. You get to this new thing that you've signed your child up for and you want to do together, and your child actually refuses to get out of the car. Familiar? Yep. That sometimes is anxiety. Another scenario. Your child is about to get on stage. Suddenly, they start to feel this nausea kicking in, and you don't know how to help them. Or they're about to take a test, and you can actually see that the anxiety is kicking in, and you know all the symptoms because the child you've been working with, a child you know, or your own child. How do you help them? Or sometimes when things happen around us, like tornadoes or like tremors like we had just the other day, or attacks like we were dealing with a few months ago, your child can become anxious about things like that. So how do you help your child? When a child is anxious, he or she will either fight, flee, or freeze, which is a stress response that someone would experience to when they're perceiving something scary. Even adults do this. You have to keep in mind that some kids actually experience anxiety more than others. According to Psychology Today, about 15 to 20% of children are born with a more anxious temperament, which pretty much means that the amygdala part of their brain is more reactive to new stimuli right from the very start. When a child is anxious, you may notice that they do some of the following. They may scream, shake, run away, be especially quiet. They may act silly, they may hide, they may cling. They may also have tantrums, or they might act out to avoid a stressful environment or an event. Brain research actually says that it's actually almost physically impossible or extremely difficult for a child to be able to think logically or even to control how they're thinking while they're still in fight, flight, or freeze mode. So how do you get them out of those three things, fight, flight, or freeze? Here are some things that you might be able to do to calm your child down, help them regain a sense of safety, and to be able to manage their own anxiety. Now, there's a nerve in all of us that is located on both sides of the voice box. And stimulating this nerve can actually interrupt fight or flight mode and send a signal to your child's brain that he or she is not under attack. The way to stimulate this nerve is by doing the following: chewing gum, singing or humming, breathing slowly, eating a piece of dark chocolate. I know it sounds pretty odd that it has to be dark chocolate, but dark chocolate is a parasympathetic regulator. And also gargling with regular water. That's one way. Simple, but it works. When your child is anxious, help them to breathe. This sounds pretty simple, but there's a way this is done. And the way this is done is you teach them to take slower and deeper breaths right from the abdomen or the diaphragm. This will help relax them. Try having them do this by blowing bubbles, especially if they're younger, they'll enjoy this, by blowing into a pinwheel, by blowing out candles on their fingertips, like, because that forces you to do it. Have a whistling contest. This would have epically failed with me because I can't whistle. Imagine that with each breath your child takes in, he or she, their body becomes filled with an amazing color or an aroma that they really love, that brings them warmth and happiness. Have them breathe in for 3, which means hold for 3 and out for 3. Hold for 3, 1, 2, 3, out for 3, 1, 2, 3. I couldn't do that while I was talking to you, but I'm sure you get what I mean. Have your child or the child you're working with narrow down what they're thinking by giving them something to do, like coloring, or have them have a jar that is a calm down jar where they can put whatever thoughts they're feeling, crumple them up and put them in there. That sometimes helps because by writing it down, you've owned it. And by throwing it in there and shutting it, you kind of lock it down and they feel like they've taken care of it. It might be a temporary thing, but it works in the moment. And the more you do it, the more ready and more comfortable they become with doing it on their own. Sometimes when children are in fight or flight mode, they lose touch of what it is that they're feeling. So sometimes it helps to have them name their feeling. Have them name it and own it. And then that way at least they'll feel like they're more in control of what's upsetting them. And when they're doing that, then they'll start to see sometimes by themselves that maybe what they're scared of is not as large as they might believe it is because they've actually named it, so it seems more friendly. Doing heavy work, sometimes it works. Doing things like push-ups and carrying a backpack and climbing a wall if you have the wall climbers, or pushing a vacuum cleaner. Yeah, it's a way to get them to do housework, but also helps them be calm as well. That's why some of us actually get calm by vacuuming. We don't realize that we're calming our bodies. Have them carry a pile of books or pull a wagon, or just do something that helps them regulate their emotions, because this is almost a distractor, but it allows them to do something physical and do some hard work that calms them down. Since you know your child or the child you work with very well, make a plan. Make a plan with your child of what they will do the next time they feel anxious. And sometimes this could be as simple as, when I feel like negative things are going to happen, I can decide to hold my own hand. And the way I do this is by using my own hands to clasp, intertwine them, and hold my own hand and squeeze really tight. And sometimes counting to 3 might help some children. Another way to be able is make a plan with your child and make it something simple that they can remember is, the next time I start to feel feelings of anxiety, I will give myself a hug, because hugs are known to have some amazing physiological and psychological warm effects. And the way your child can give themselves a discreet hug is by crossing their arms across their body really tightly and then just squeezing, and squeeze for as long as they need to until the anxious feeling goes away. That's another way you could make a plan. Make sure whatever plan you make with your child, there's no script for this, is something that they can remember, and that they can remember step 1, step 2, step 3 to be able to help them feel calm. So make a plan with your child. Work with them so that they can have ownership of it, because when they have ownership of this plan, they're more likely to do it to the best of their ability on their own. Make journaling or writing down things a habit for your child. And I'm sure you're thinking, great, you're giving me another exercise for my child to start writing down things when I can barely get them to do their homework. Yeah, journaling actually works. Researchers from Harvard actually found that writing about a stressful event for about 15 minutes for about 4 consecutive days actually helped a person feel less anxious about an event. Although initially they felt anxiety about writing about the event, eventually the effects of writing about whatever was causing them anxiety actually helped relieve symptoms for up to 6 months after they did the exercise. This is one method that may work with your child, so give it a shot and see. Sometimes using humor in an appropriate situation, sometimes using humor is a good way to help your child calm down. And the way you can do this is by doing something goofy together, or playing around, or reading a funny book together so that you can laugh. And this helps become a distractor for them. Or tell jokes, however crazy, funny, silly they are. Sometimes humor works. So if it works in that situation, because you have to really assess the situation, then please go ahead and try and see if that works for your child or the child you're working with. Have a ritual that you use with your child whenever they experience an anxious situation. For example, the visit to the doctor's office where the injection's coming and they're freaking out. Have this routine where once you're done with the doctor's office, maybe you always go for ice cream. That's a routine and a ritual that you can establish. Or when you're sitting somewhere and your child doesn't like waiting at the airport and gets anxious before a flight, have a whole stack of books that they like, Superman comics or whatever it is that they're excited about, and have this stack that they get used to a routine and it helps calm them down. I know as adults we've established our own routines for whether when we're nervous about flying, when we're nervous about a trip, we establish our own routines. That's because we've learned how to deal with them. So help your child come up with a routine that helps to relieve stress by providing a stability anchor and actually helps them relieve stress. So find a routine and a ritual that works and stick with it each time you go through that anxiety-inducing event. Another strategy is writing stuff down and then throwing it out. A study published in Psychological Science, I was looking down because I have to remember what I was going to tell you and make sure it's factual. A study published in Psychological Science actually said that the next time your child is anxious, try and have them write their thoughts on paper and then crumple that paper up and throw it out. The actual action of throwing that paper out helped many people change their perspectives of what it was that was making them anxious. So see if this one could work for your child. Another strategy could be writing a letter to yourself. This is something I found from an author called Kristin Neff, who's a professor at the University of Texas in Austin. And she's a pioneer in the field of self-compassion. And she came up with this strategy where a child can write a letter to themselves by addressing it and starting as, "Dear me." And then they continue this letter as if they're writing to an imaginary friend and teaching them how they could be able to deal with a worry that is similar to theirs. By doing this, what a child ends up doing is self-reflecting and trying to examine a situation and see it in an objective manner in order for them to apply that level of compassion that they're applying to the friend in the letter to themselves. So it allows them to be more compassionate with themselves about their worry. And when you remove that judgment, it goes a long way. So this might be a strategy that works for your child. It's worth a try. Helping your child reflect on what causes them anxiety can actually help them build resilience and strength for the next time that they might feel those feelings. And some of the ways that you can help your child reflect is by doing the following. I love this list I got from Psychology Today. It is ask. On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was it to do the thing that we just did? Was it harder or easier than another tough activity that you did? What one thing helped you get through it today? What one thing did you enjoy about what we just did? Then, or you could also ask them to picture themselves looking through a hole in a wall at themselves when they were stressed. Or you could ask them, what did you notice about yourself? And the last one that I got from Psychology Today was, what message would you give yourself in that moment that you are feeling anxiety, because when you do that, you allow a child to address how they felt. And sometimes by reflecting on what they felt, they actually come up with strategies of how to deal with it the next time. And maybe they might help another child who's experienced the same type of anxiety by giving them advice based on what it is that they reflected on. So those are some short, sweet ways to be able to help calm your anxious child. Remember, there are many, many different ways. Please keep in mind that every child is different. Some of these may work with your child, some may not. But before you decide to throw one out, please make sure you give it a chance to grow. So try it at least 3 times before you throw it out as something that doesn't work for your child. And I'm hoping that these will help you or the child you're working with figure out how to deal with their anxiety in a way that allows them to function on a daily basis. So that's it. That's all, folks. It was going to be short and sweet. I don't believe in overloading you with information. I really hope this helps. If you have some other ways that you think might help other people who are working with children deal with anxiety, please feel free to comment in the description box, not description box, right in the comments below, and we'll see how we can help each other. Remember, this is a channel of love and acceptance and no judgment. So let's help each other out. Thanks as always for watching. Stay tuned for more topics. Bye.